Hi everyone, LiberAnarchy here, and I wanted to make yet another video, although this one is much more trite. Perhaps the other one was just as trite, actually, but who knows. I wanted to make a video about why I like tabletop role-playing so much. The first reason is because a lot of video games I can't see much anymore. Back in the day, when I played video games, there's not much to see when it comes to Pac-Man, Super Mario Brothers, Tetris, Cubert, Dig Dug. I mean, there's not a whole lot of details to follow, and there's not a whole bunch of icons on the bottom of the screen, and likewise not a whole bunch of hotkeys to memorize to avoid having all the icons on the bottom of the screen. So my lack of visual acuity wasn't a problem when I was playing video games. And even now there are some games where it's really not a problem. Like I've played Mario Kart with the Wii and I've had fun with that, but again, it's made to be simple. It's not made to be some detailed MMORPG or something. But even with games like Oblivion, they aren't necessarily as detailed as something like World of Warcraft. You still have little odds and ends that you have to follow that I can't necessarily see. So, yeah. And even with the graphics, they are absolutely stunning now, and I'm happy to see that video games have come so far, but it's gotten to the point where the details in the graphics, I'm likely missing crucial things, crucial elements of the game. So yeah, so the visual acuity thing is not going to stop me in tabletop role playing. It just pulls an obstacle out of the equation. And with LARPing, of course, unless somebody's a complete jerk, people aren't going to say, oh, well, you know, who cares if you can't see to fight a war or something like that. I mean, the battles and stuff are in good fun, right? I mean, so, yeah, people in real life will have consideration for other people, but with LARP, it's going to get expensive. The exception is at a convention or something where they say, try a new LARP. You don't have to have a costume. Or, come play a Monty Python LARP that I've gotten together. It's Monty Python. You don't have to have a costume for this. But if I were to just join a group playing Vampire the Masquerade, for example, then I would be expected to go, you know, actually buy a costume and actually put time into making and or buying this costume. So, and I don't mind putting time into character creation. What I mind is, well, I mind it if it starts eating things up, you know, eating into my other real life stuff. Like right now, I can say, well, I have to throw away 2 old broken printers, but I can do that now, I can do that later. Researching a new printer, I can do it now, I can do it later. This video, for example, is not going to eat into that, right? But starting to get into making costumes and stuff, since I would have so much to learn to do that, it would really start eating into my time, and for me, it would no longer be fun. Now, if I had, like, say if I had a good friend who could show me how to sew, you know, in exchange for something else, like help me move it out, and I'll help you make a costume or something like that, well, then that would be different. Because then I would at least have the help. I wouldn't be going it alone or something. But as it stands now, it would be too much time and too much money to just dive into a LARP. Now with tabletop role playing, it's as cheap as you want to make it. If you have to go to a gaming shop or a friend's house, it's gas money. Dice, I have a lot of dice, but you know what? I don't necessarily have to get new dice. I may get some fudge dice, but that doesn't mean that I have to keep getting fudge dice. They're cheap. It's a one-shot expense. Okay, the manuals. Okay, first of all, those are easily pirated. And if you don't want to pirate those, that's fine, but you don't even necessarily have to buy them. If you have a DM, I guess a GM, if you know, depending on what you're playing, or a judge, or whatever you want to call it, depending on the game, right? If you're dealing with a real life manual, have a session where it's character creation. Everyone creates a character. I've done that with D&D all the time because people didn't want to go out and buy fucking manuals. And when we did have more people involved in the group and people did want to go ahead and just buy things, people started pirating, and since you had people living next to each other in apartments and stuff, just bring over the player manual. You don't even have to pirate it, you know. So yeah. So if you don't want to spend the money, you really don't have to. And even if you do, just getting a player's manual, it's not that expensive. It's a book. Okay? Now, I do have a little bit of complaints about how when you start getting specialized books and manuals for specialized characters and specialized campaigns, and how you have things like, and you have like new editions that come out where sometimes the rules will change really drastically, so you can't just get by with an old manual. Yeah, but even then, if you don't want to play 4th edition and you want to stick with 3.5, which I think would be better anyway, because 4th edition D&D doesn't even have a bard, so fuck that. I mean, really, just on principle, fuck that. And fuck that. Anyway, so, yeah, you don't have to update your editions, and if somebody wants to bring in something new, like if somebody wanted to bring in an idea from 4th edition, if you're dealing with a good GM, then they're going to say, well, I don't have the manual, and if you don't have the manual, what we can do is just hash out a set of reasonable rules. And there have been many times where I've wanted to do something with a character that's slightly unusual, and so the approach has been, you present me with something reasonable and I will look it over and see. You present me with a reasonable set of rules for how this power works, or for the, how on earth you're going to make this magical item or something like that, and we'll hash it out together and we'll figure out a set of rules. So you don't even necessarily have to update manuals and shit like that. I mean, it just kind of, it depends on all what you want to do, really. And I think the last point, as far as it can remain as cheap as you want to keep it, and the last point is you're using more of your imagination. I would rather see what human beings come up with, even within the confines of very specific rules. As far as characters and story development, and just pulling unusual, unexpected actions out of their hat in gameplay, instead of being given a specific set of moves and that's all you can do. Now, I get that games now are extremely versatile and they let you do a lot, and some of the roleplay gets very detailed, and that's awesome. But there's still a human element that isn't there. There's still an element in tabletop role playing where the players can stump the DM. There's still an element where the DM can come out with like a really interesting plot line. There's still an element of where players can come up with unusual character concepts that aren't going to be just within a set of archetypes that you can pick from in a game. And in with backgrounds, those get real interesting. A lot of times, and I don't mind this at all, backgrounds get pretty cliche. No, that's fine. Not everyone cares about the background. I'm a fighter because I chose to fight. Okay, let's start fighting. Let's roll some initiatives. I want to fight. But then there are the other people who really get into background and are like, hey, let's throw in umpteen bajillion potentials for plot development in all this. I rather like handing a DM a background that's full of stuff that they can work with. Now, this isn't in every situation, mind you. I mean, I've had some very, piss poor kind of, well, I'm on the run from the law because I escaped because I stole something. There we go, I have a background. Okay, now I got that part of the character creation over with, so now that I have my stats and my background, what's my name? Let's see, if my character is a half-elf, let's see, think of something healthy, Therulian. There we go, that sounds healthy. Boom, there's my name, okay. Yeah, I've done that, whatever, yeah, sure. But I've also done situations where I have this long, ridiculous background that's full of potential for all kinds of plot. And actually, I've spent time, too much time in a lot of cases where I want a background to line up with history to a degree. For example, if I'm playing in medieval fantasy, I am very likely to look up something, not just in the game universe, but something in the way of what people did back in the Middle Ages, say, to wash clothes, or how many wooden bowls would a commoner have, generally speaking? Did they really keep porridge in the pot for 9 days? Stuff like that. And sometimes for backgrounds, just to add flavor to my background, I will look this shit up and I will include it. Because I like having believable characters. It's called suspension of disbelief. And I'm rambling a lot, but you get my point. Role-playing allows for a human element, the element of imagination and creativity and spontaneity that video games yet still don't allow for. And even LARP does that, but again, that starts getting expensive and really inconvenience as far as travel. Or if it's tabletop role playing, you're not necessarily going to have to go to a park across town. It might just be go to an apartment or a house. It's a 10-minute drive away, and the expense is going to be getting food on the way and gas money and stuff like that. And if you don't want to spend money on food, bring a sandwich. It's not the end of the world. If you don't want to spend money on dice, there are people that will have loads and loads and loads of dice there. Don't want to spend money on manuals? Don't spend money